Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinsport, and I got two Dark Shadows videos for you here today. My first video is the arrival of Dr. Julia Hoffman in the 1966 Dark Shadows series. Now, mind you, she doesn't arrive till 67, so it's how this character is first mentioned that always gets me. Because for those who don't know, Dr. Julia Hoffman isn't mentioned as a woman. She's actually mentioned. She is actually mentioned as a he in the series. By Dr. Dave Woodard, Hoffman is mentioned as a man. They don't say the first name. They just say Dr. Hoffman and is mentioned as a he. But what I love here is that they do take the he and make the character into a she. Make them a woman. They make it Dr. Julia Hoffman. I think that was such a smooth transition and such a really good one, and one that was really needed, because if you think about it, you already have Dr. Dave Woodard. You have your male doctor. So the complete opposite of male would be female. And why not, instead of just having them as opposite sex, have them be completely different doctors? While Dr. Woodard is a physician and a surgeon, and yes, Hoffman does perform surgeries, she is also a doctor of psychology. She is a psychological doctor. Yeah, she can perform surgeries, but her practice is, you know, again, psychology. So it studies the mind and everything else. I dare say Julia Hoffman could be a female Dr. Loomis prior to Dr. Loomis. A doctor who is obsessed with odd things. A doctor who is obsessed with maybe the supernatural and paranormal. Now, you could say they basically took the Dr. Guthrie character and made him, Dr. Hoffman. Could you say that? I think so in some sense, but here's why I'll say it differs. Dr. Guthrie here's the large difference with Peter Guthrie and Dr. Julie Hoffman. Peter Guthrie, while yes, would go to great lengths like Julia Hoffman, Dr. Guthrie would really examine the actual sense of it, and he wasn't, to the point of trying to destroy something and neither was Hoffman, I'm saying, but the difference is Guthrie with the Phoenix was, let's make sure that's what it is, through everybody else. He was more open with his feelings about it to other people. He was almost too open, and that's what got him killed. And that's where I'll say the biggest difference and the most interesting tale lies, because here's Dr. Julie Hoffman, and she's not so much open. She is closed. She's not as open with, you know, her fellow colleagues, and especially Dave Woodard. And here's what I find curious. I've always found curious. She's not as open with Dave Woodard as Dave Woodard is with her and everyone else. She's very closed and closed off. She plays everything close to the chest, close to her heart. She's not necessarily trying to lie, but she's willing to lie to protect what she feels is important to her. She's all about what she can find out, what's revolutionary to her. She's almost self-centered in a way, but you sort of love her for it. You don't really hate her for it or dislike her for it. And for being a woman, she's got a to quote John Philip Betancourt, and I agree with him, she's got some brass balls. And she does. She's very gutsy. She's not just determined. Determined, you could say that about many doctors throughout film. She's got raw nerve and a lot of determination. She's got raw courage. She's not afraid to stand up to supernatural things. And basically, and you saw like the smack she did with Angelique, who's played by Laura Parker. She's not afraid to get in the supernatural's face. So, and like I said, she's very secretive. She's not afraid to keep things to herself. When Dave Woodard tries to push her about information about Maggie Evans, even prior to Barnabas, Julia Hoffman just isn't forthcoming with that information. She wants to know it for herself more than have other people know it, is what I'll say. And it makes you wonder, well, why? Why is she that way? And it just drives you out of your mind, curiosity wise, of, man, this woman is just, she has no problem basically telling people, look, it's my case, it's my thing, leave out, stay out of it. She has no problem putting other people in their place to keep them out of her business. And they really needed this character, and you can see why they made the change to a woman to counteract Barnabas, because up until this point, before Julia Hoffman is introduced to the Collins family as the historian, and before she finds out, Barnabas is a vampire, no one has really challenged Barnabas. He's sort of gone unopposed. You know, now people are going to point to Sarah Collins, but here's the thing. Barnabas does not actually see Sarah until after Julia Hoffman arrives. He hears about her. He hears about her from Willie and other people, even before Julia arrives, but he hasn't seen her, so there's no confrontation there yet between brother and sister, between the ghost and the vampire, if you will. And lo and behold, Julia Hoffman does arrive in Collinsport, posing as a historical research, writing a book on historical families of New England, wealthy families. And Dave Woodard and her have this agreement. This is to help her find out who did this to Maggie. That's what she tells Dave Woodard. And again, she's basically that this woman is her own smoking gun in many ways. She's going to tell you what you want to hear, but not what you need to hear. Well, in a sense, she tells you, let me rephrase that. She tells you what she thinks you need to hear in order to help move forward for you. Basically, she's playing Dave Woodard to get further in her agenda, whatever it is. But if you go watch Dark Shadows, you can see that. You can see that she is playing Dave Woodard to the degree of she's using him to get the truth, to get for herself, not necessarily for Maggie, not necessarily for Joe or Sam, but for herself. She wants to know what causes. This is a curious situation that Maggie has just went through. And Maggie went through pure hell. And when she gets there, she does, she meets Victoria Winters, and that's where, Victoria's telling her about, the history, and she goes, well, you know a lot about it. She goes, no, I've only learned this from really Barnabas. And she's like, well, and Julia Hoffman's like, well, who's Barnabas? And she tells him, and Barnabas's own hesitance and reluctance towards Julia makes Julia all the more suspicious of him. You almost sort of want to, like, Barnabas being overprotective of himself only made Julia the more suspicious of him. And them saying he's a descendant of the original, and everyone saying about Sarah, well, she finds out Sarah was the sister of the original Barnabas, yada, yada, yada. And she's sitting in the old house, and Barnabas is looking through the history book of the Collins family history, and she's like talking to him. She's got her back turned. She has a compact with one of those mirrors. A compact has a mirror in it, and she's looking, and he has no reflection, and that's how she finds out. And he comes all the more suspicious of her. He sort of catches her, like, "What are you doing?" And he goes to visit her at night. And she's all too ready for him. She goes, "I can help you." And lo and behold, a deal is struck between Dr. Julia Hoffman, and she tells him, "I'm a doctor, I'm not really a historian." So they know each other's secret. And this introduction is so key. Again, we've never seen anybody really stand up to Barnabas the way, people are going to point to Burke Devlin, and I get it. But here's the thing, Burke stood up to everybody. That's not really a shock. You have a woman empowered here, and that is the best thing this series had done for me. Not just introduce Barnabas, but introduce Julia. Because in many ways, when Victoria started, even though she was sweet and innocent, she would stand up for herself. And you like to see a woman be strong, especially during the 60s when, those were tough times for women in general. And you definitely saw a great transition of, here's this character, she's not afraid, she's not afraid to stand up for herself, to keep things from other people. How far will she go just made you more curious of what she would do and what she wouldn't do. And I just really enjoyed the character of Dr. Julia Hoffman, played by Grayson Hall. She did an amazing job. And the one thing I'll leave here with before I sign off on this review, when they did, prior to going back to 1795, because that's where I'm going into next, the Sarah and Barnabas house sequence where Barnabas is choking Julia Hoffman, because at this point in time, Julia Hoffman and him just were on not great terms. Barnabas had felt Julia betrayed him, and in many ways she sort of did. She sort of got sick of his. See, let's call a spade a spade. Dr. Julia Hoffman fell in love with Barnabas Collins. She honestly did love him and does love him. That's the one thing I think John did so well, transitioning that to his story. She was in love with him, and anybody could see it clear as day. I mean, Jonathan Frynn's a good looking dude. I mean, it's not hard to picture why a woman would be attracted to him or fall in love with him. So it's not out of the ordinary or, suspicious of why she feels that way. She's just really attracted to him, and she falls in love with him. She really cares for him. She says they're just nothing more than friends. But trust me, if given the chance, Julia Hoffman would would jump on Barnabas like there was no tomorrow. Come on, guys, you guys know this. Um, but again, the interaction between Sarah and Barnabas, when he's choking Julia and we see the chandelier shake, and there's Sarah, and she tells him, you taught me what evil was, good and evil, the difference. You have to relearn that now. And this is prior to the seance. And, many things set up the seance. David seeing her, Maggie coming back, Maggie coming back and saying about her. There's so many things that set up this seance. Burke Devlin's death in some way sort of sets up this seance. They're using it to mainly contact the ghost of Sarah, but by this time Burke Devlin has died off. They killed off the character of Burke Devlin by a plane crash. Now you have the seance. It's coming. It's gonna happen. Julia Hoffman's agreed to she wants to do it. Barnabas is reluctant to do it, but he decides to do it anyway. And by this time, Barnabas has bitten Carolyn Stoddard, and Carolyn is under the spell of Barnabas. She is now Barnabas' servant and guards Barnabas during the day. A whole lot of craziness to get into when I come back for the 1795 storyline. Can't wait to do it, guys. Really excited. I got a video coming right up after this. The Return of Dark Shadows Revisited tour begins. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.